It's exciting for me to be here to host this amazing group of women, considering that I've had a little bit of dabbling as a former provincial finance minister and also a minister status of women. I sit on the board of SheEO, and I'm excited and humbled to meet these fantastic women with those of you that are in the audience tonight. So we heard a little bit about Tracy as she spoke to Vicky. Cam, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll go over to Nadine.
Hello, audience, and thank you for having me. I'm so proud to be here on International Women's Day, which at iFundWomen means it's every day, literally 365, 24/7. And so just brief intro, I'm the founder and CEO of iFundWomen. iFundWomen is a funding marketplace that connects women-owned businesses around the world with funders who want to support them. And we've got 4 products inside the marketplace, from a crowdfunding product to an ed tech, which is like a startup school, teaches you all the things you need to know about not only raising capital, but also running a business, which is, part of the sort of funding gap problem is like, how do we get the best funding, which is revenue from customers? And we've got iFundWomen of Color, which is a specific platform to support BIPOC founders. Very proud to announce that we have brought iFundWomen's funding volume up to parity over 4 years within 1 year of launching iFundWomen of Color. And we've got our enterprise brokered grants product, which allows big enterprises to deploy grants to their potential customers. And we have a great thing going on in Canada. I know we have a lot of Canadians in the audience. So if you're a Canadian entrepreneur, Visa in Canada wants to fund you. So go check out iFundWomen and search around for Visa Canada's grant program. It's going on right now. So happy to be here.
That's great. Nice to have you here, Karen. Nadine, you've been extremely busy. No pandemic has been able to keep you slow. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what you've been up to for the last year, especially with the work that you've been doing with the Black Business and Professional Association and the exciting things that you're up to?
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be here. Cathy, thank you for your role in this. And Tracy, I have to say, we have to connect. Because if everything needs Tracy's blessing, I have a whole bunch of amazing women that needs to have Tracy's blessing. So we have to talk after this. When the pandemic started, I remembered clients reached out to me and they said, what should I do? Should we pause? And I said, absolutely not. We cannot pause. We have to push forward in a major way. And that was, of course, wearing the role of my marketing and communications agency. I'm the CEO of Brand EQ Agency, a strategic marketing and communications firm. And we do our work through really amplifying the voices of our audience. And we do a lot of that in the minority space and the diverse space, and also in the women's space. And I volunteer as the president of the Black Business and Professional Association. We are a 38-year-old organization that works to address equity and create economic opportunities for Black business and Black professionals. We also have a booming youth startup, Black youth startup, because we recognize that 40% of Black youth who go on to post-secondary studies, they do not graduate because of systemic challenges. And so what we see is a huge sector in Black youth startup. And of course, what we recognize and what we're here to discuss is that the lack of capital. And because I'm from a Jamaican mother who says, Nadine, when you start a business, don't worry about the money. Just you start the business and go forth and the money will come. Sometimes that the money doesn't come, but it's the innovation that we have to pull to the table to bring the funds. And I think part of that innovation, which I'll get into, is some of the work that we're doing with the federal government on the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Because one of the things we recognize as women, as Black women in business, is that we have to find a way because there's no option. And so with the organization, we work with different sectors and partnerships to make alternative funding available. And so I'm looking forward to having this discussion.
Excellent. Well, Tracy, we had a chance to get to know you a little bit as you had a very intimate chat with Vicky, which is always fun. But I have to say to the audience, if you haven't checked out Tracy on a podcast that was hosted by, I think, Echo, I would strongly encourage you to go listen to the podcast and learn even more about Tracy. It was a very empowering podcast to listen to the weekend, Tracy, so I'm glad I got to share it. Tracy, you've been in the business of helping raise capital in various ways for a long time. I mean, you've had a number of things that you've done. Can you tell us some really specific things around, that you've done even before you started this incredible journey to raise $100 million fund as the first Black woman to do that in the U.S. Tell me a little bit about what you've done in the past.
Well, like I said with Vicki, I started as an engineer on the space shuttle program, but went into venture capital in 1999 and just loved it, and have been in and around helping entrepreneurs raise capital since then and investing. But I saw very early on that it was mainly white men. We were literally giving $2 million to two guys in a garage and an idea. And I just didn't, from being an engineer, it wasn't logical. And then being raised from parents who believed in social justice, it wasn't fair. And that has driven me for a very long time. And I've always been looking at the nexus between private capital and economic development in communities, and how you can leverage the two beyond philanthropy, but investment to change communities and grow wealth. And so in 2015, I started a nonprofit that's still going on slowly, but we're doing a big global campaign this year. It's called We Are Enough, and the We Are Women are enough to invest in women-owned businesses or with a gender lens on the capital markets, especially women of color. I saw for a very long time there were a lot of people trying to create more women entrepreneurs or fund managers, but no one was talking to the everyday woman from the bottom of the proverbial pyramid to the top of Wall Street, talking about the power of money and investing. We'll give away a lot of money, but for some reason we won't invest it. And you literally giving away money and losing money when you do that. So We Are Enough is going to be launching a campaign this year to get 3 million women over 3 years to invest in women-owned businesses or with a gender lens. And if we're successful, we'll move $3 billion toward women and their businesses. And that's never happened before. So we have a bunch of partners from around the world to help us doing that. And if the pandemic time doesn't change things, we should be able to launch in the third quarter.
That's fantastic. Karen, one of the words that keeps coming up when we talk about money and we talk about investing it as women is the word confidence. And I had to say, when I read your bio on your company website, I was struck with the power of confidence in your bio. So can you tell me why that's such an important word to you? And also maybe tell us a little bit about the 3 core principles of capital, coaching, and connections that is such an essential part of the iFundWomen.
Cathy, that's fascinating that you would get confidence from my bio. I think that, so much of what Tracy, and I'm sure Nadine and I are all going to be speaking from a similar script, which is good because we're ladies that have been doing this for a while, is that, so only 1% of companies, regardless of the gender of the founder, actually can raise venture capital. So it's not that they don't need venture capital. Venture capitalists, in my opinion, are just funding the wrong stuff. Not always, but by and large, and funding the same people. So I'm sure you've talked about that a ton. We're not going to go into the algorithms. We'll leave that be. But as we're talking about the 99%, how we fund the 99% of startup founders who don't get venture capital, it's not that we don't need it or shouldn't get it or aren't VC appropriate, because we sure are. It's that it's not accessible to us. So in the States, we look at, when we started iFundWomen, it was started by 3 white ladies, okay? And we were our own customers. It was Sarah, Kate, and I. We are second-time startup founders. Our first startup was a spectacular failure. We could not raise capital to save our lives. And these are 3 white, 1%ers in New York. I came from Google and YouTube, super highly connected, all 3 of us. We could not raise capital to save our lives. And we thought to ourselves, wait a minute, if it's this hard for us, how hard must it be for our sisters of color, who are the majority of women entrepreneurs, to raise capital? So we literally pivoted. We sunsetted failed startup number 1. And I was like, we're not doing that anymore. This problem is a massive systemic problem. And we knew that, not only was only 1% of companies getting venture capital, but, for women founders in the US, $300 billion is deployed in VC roughly every year. And that number didn't go down during the pandemic. Yet women as a group, women-founded companies received in 2020 2.3%, and BIPOC female founders received 0.64%. I'm sure you guys have talked about data all day long, but if you didn't, those are the numbers. They're egregious and disgusting. But then when you look at the rest of the financial services system, who are also providing funding options for early stage entrepreneurs, i.e. really crappy loans where we get higher loan rates and lower loan amounts than our male counterparts. In some states, including some blue ones in the US, you need to have a male co-signer on your business loan for realsies. New Jersey, thumbs down on that. This happens. So the systemic racism and biases that are littered all over our financial services system vis-a-vis startup funding have been here for centuries. You know, the algorithms are all whack. So the way we thought about building our product was we looked at the holistic approach to capital, coaching, and connections, because we know from the research that, sure, most women are going to tell you that the lack of access to actual capital is the number one barrier to them starting up. But almost half of women will tell you that the lack of access to specific subject matter experts, not necessarily mentors, not inspiration, but subject matter experts who can literally show you tactical, practical information on how to start a successful business, that is sorely needed. And that's a barrier to them starting up. And then the third barrier, particularly for our founders of color, which is actually the second largest barrier besides for capital, is connections, access to connections, to follow-on capital, to banking relationships, to all the things. And so we've focused all of the products that we build within the funding marketplace, whether it's our ed tech product, our enterprise brokered grants product, which is where we broker grants on behalf of, Visa, American Express. All the banks are starting to sound the same at this point. I love you all. Thank you for funding women entrepreneurs, truly. Adidas, Diageo, Jane Walker. There's so many brands that want to fund women entrepreneurs and are doing it through iFundWomen's platform, which is great. But truly, we've had to think of so many ways beyond venture capital to get our founders funded. And so that's what we do. We've created $80 million in early stage funding for women entrepreneurs, mostly here in the US, since we've launched about 4.5 years ago. Very proud of that. And mostly proud about the focus on BIPOC founders. And just if you'll indulge me for one more minute, and Cathy, just like get the gong if I'm going on and on. Seriously.
One more minute.
Okay, cool. So and I'm not gonna sit here and be like the white lady talking, about BIPOC founders with Tracy and Nadine here. I've been corrected many times, like it happens. But over 70% of our members are BIPOC founders, and we knew that from the beginning. And so Olivia Owens, who's employee number one at iFundWomen, Black woman. I was like, Olivia, what are we doing here? Like, do we have a separate platform? She's like, no, it would be redundant. I'm like, okay, but I feel like we need like a separate place for people to be discovered, because discoverability is so hard on large platforms. So we did a 3-year beta test. What happens if we just have everyone together? And the 30% of white founders on our platform raised 70% of the money. And literally, that was the breakdown. 70% of the BIPOC founders raised 30% of the money. So in early 2019, I was like, Livy, enough's enough. You're starting iFundWomen of Color. We're doing this. And in 1 year, in 2020, we changed the cumulative funding volume of iFundWomen to 51% BIPOC founders and 49% white founders. And I know all BIPOC founders are not created equal, but it's a step in the right direction. And the last thing I will say is, this is inspiration for you everyday women with brilliant ideas out there that don't think they can change the world. You can. Olivia Owens and I are not celebrities. We just are passionate. So I'll leave you with that.
And I'd say confident as well. Nadine, you're investing.
I forgot about that. Like,
no problem.
Sure.
Nadine, you're investing a tremendous amount of personal energy into disrupting the systems in Canada, particularly around funding for BIPOC entrepreneurs. I understand that you're leading a group of people who are passionately looking at a solution that's setting up a specific stream of funding for BIPOC entrepreneurs in Canada. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I hear a lot in the women entrepreneurs that we work with, it's the line, don't take it personally, when we're not funded. Don't take it personally. This didn't add up and you can't get the money. And of course, the stat shows, 40% of Black women who apply for funding, they get $0. And so what do we do with that as we're looking to fund our business? And, Karen, you're talking about crappy loans. We have one of our members at the BBPA who shares her story that when she was funding her business, she borrowed money at 25% from a loan shark, 25%, refinanced her home 7 times in order to get her business going. But you know what? The ray of sunlight is at the end of the story. She's viable and she's doing it. And she's now doing, I think, between $5 to $9 million a year. And the next step is she's scaling up to more than that. So it shows you that despite the challenges, it can happen. It can happen. We can make it. When we look at the numbers that Black women are starting businesses at, the fastest rate of any racial group, according to a study by American Express, it shows that, Black women, their businesses have grown, I think 200%. So despite the challenges, and you talk about the biases and the racial challenges and access, this sector is still growing at a rapid rate, despite the challenges. And what does that mean? It means that we're looking at alternate forms of ways to drive our business, alternate ways of funding. And what are they? Many people, of course, go into, the crowdfunding, the family. And as I mentioned, my colleague who borrowed funds at, 25%, which is just crazy. But despite all of that, she still made it. And so last summer, we did a survey comparing Black-owned businesses to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which looks at mainstream businesses. And when we did the research, it showed that the gaps, there's a huge glaring gap between Black-owned businesses and mainstream. And then when we looked at those numbers, Black women were even at the lower part of that. And the biggest challenge was access to capital. We just don't have the access. We don't have the credit lines. We don't have all of those things. Not only that, when we do have funds, we use our own money. So they max out the credit cards, and then the credit rating is lowered, and then it becomes this vicious cycle of getting funding. But we took that survey with a group of individuals across the country, Groupe Transet, Côte de Neige Community, Black Organization, Black Business Initiative, and the African Center in the west of Canada. And we sort of brought all of that to government to say, hey, these entrepreneurs in Canada, these Black entrepreneurs, will contribute to this economy and this society. And we were now working with the Canadian government to, we've developed the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, which is a powerful tool that will directly impact the ability of Black businesses to get funding, but also in the state of this pandemic, to recover from COVID-19, and to thrive in the future. And the National Ecosystem Fund is a part of that. There's 3 different areas. The National Ecosystem Fund, which will support, not-for-profit Black-led organizations across the country to build capacity for in the areas of mentorship, financial planning for Black entrepreneurs, and then also the Knowledge Hub, which will provide data, which will look at where the gaps are in the for Black businesses, and then of course look for solutions to solve them. And of course, the most important part is the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, working with the financial institutions and the government and the 5 Black-led organizations is to provide loans, of up to $250,000 to Black business owners and entrepreneurs across the country. And with the loans, I think a big part of that is going to be is the training that the Knowledge Hub and the ecosystem will offer. So that's one of the areas that we have we're working on and still continue to work on with the various financial institutions. We're looking at the lending criteria, streamlining models to improve accessibility for interested businesses as well.
So it's incredible the amount of energy that you're individually investing and collectively investing of your own human capital to make things change. Rapid fire question. Tracy, you talked earlier about innovation needs to happen in the next 10 years. What would you be the biggest innovation that you'd like to see manifest itself in the next decade? In 1 minute or less.
Well, it doesn't sound like innovation. But it is when it comes to venture capital, is to invest where your interests are aligned with your company you're investing in, instead of us being extractive or predatory, and make it a win-win, which right now that's not how the industry is.
Karen, how about you?
To make any real systemic change, we've got to solve the give a shit problem. And the give a shit problem is that whether it's the VCs, the banks, corporations, CEOs of any company, if they don't care about BIPOC folks and creating intergenerational wealth, they're not going to hire BIPOC folks at the highest levels. They're not going to diversify their cap tables, and invest in BIPOC founders. Mm-hmm. So I'll turn that around into a manifestation. I want all the big CEOs of the multinational corporations and the VCs to give a shit. And that it'll solve the problem. It's magic. It really is a magical solution that can happen very quickly. There's not a pipeline problem. There is not a pipeline problem. End of story. Thank you.
Nadine, over to you. What's the most innovative thing that you'd like to see happen in the way of funding the 99%?
Yeah, I think in really looking at data to see who's funded and being innovative and intentional about when we look at the data and we look at the gaps, how do we then look at the underrepresented individuals in our society and find solutions, customizable solutions that fits their particular need, because you can't have criteria where everyone is judged in the same way.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm going to close off by saying what gets measured gets results.
Absolutely.
Big believer in data. And to me, as we look through the next decade, hope isn't an emotion anymore for me. Hope is a choice. And, SheEO inspires all of us to either activate, to invest, to be ventures that are braving to do something that we never thought we were going to do. And to our panelists today who are disrupting the world, disrupting the systems, we're so excited to have you share some time with us tonight. Congratulations on your great work. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day.
Thanks.
And thank you very much.
Happy International Women's Day.